Hi, I'm Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. I'm delighted to welcome back former Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Talk to us a little bit about what a repudiation of American values, of basic facts it was to hear Donald Trump really spilling Russian propaganda about the invasion of Ukraine and being prepared, apparently, to negotiate away their sovereignty.
It's even worse than that. I'm hearing today that French media is reporting that the U.S. is looking at suspending war crime prosecutions or investigations of war crimes by Russia, and there's also a rumor out there fairly strong that Trump has been invited and is considering accepting going to the Moscow Victory Day parade. There's nothing, frankly, more pro-Soviet than doing that. And look, here's the reality of it. We spent a lot of blood and treasure, obviously, in World War II. And we lost, coincidentally, half as many people as Russia has lost in Ukraine, by the way. So we liberated an entire continent and took down an empire with that. But we spent a lot of blood and treasure to basically create a world order that not just benefits peace, it does, but benefits us. I mean, really, the world order has been written that we own the rules to the road. And in no time flat, this siren song of, gosh, we're all tired, aren't we? We're just exhausted. Why? We've been watching it on TV. The World War II generation wasn't exhausted after World War II. They stayed in Europe. And we quickly, in a period of, I'd say really a week, but in all honesty, all of Trump's second presidency, 1 month, we basically have said to the world, you're on your own. America's retreating to our borders. We're not going to be here for you anymore. And here's the thing. We may not feel this within a year, maybe not even 2 years, but we will rue the day that we did this, that we scored a goal on our own side simply because of politics or because we followed one crazy man into this journey. And unfortunately, this is going to have to be earned back again someday with American blood and treasure.
Aside from the moral embarrassment, the humiliation of siding with a dictator like Putin, talk to us a little bit about what would happen if Putin were rewarded for his invasion. And by the way, it was Russia that invaded. It wasn't Ukraine's fault. It was attacked. Will he stop with part of Ukraine? Where does it go from here if he's allowed to, after a few years of blood spilled, and of course he doesn't have popular opinion to worry about, he was rewarded with partially rebuilding his Russian empire?
Look, if we're to believe that he is going to stop at Ukraine, maybe he will, maybe he'll die in the next year, who knows, right? But if we're to believe that, that will be the first time ever in history, and we've learned that history does often repeat itself, that a dictator, and a dictator in Russia, was satisfied with the extent of their land. So if he takes Ukraine, he was like, you know what, that's all I wanted. What's next? Well, in reality, what's next is he really believes he needs to take the other 2/3 of Georgia. And we know that Georgia has an illegitimate government right now that the Georgian people are standing up against and being very loud and brave about. We know that he considers the Baltics not real countries. Those are all part of Russia and his. So Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So once he moves into there, then the question is, what about Poland? I mean, really, they occupied Poland for however many years. He should just get that back, as well as then we get into Hungary, and we could go down the line to where he rebuilds this empire. And the worst part about it is when he attacks, and inevitably he will if he's allowed to get away with this, when he attacks or challenges a NATO partner, he is going to be betting on that the United States won't be there to back NATO. And I got to tell you, I hate to say this publicly, honestly, but I have a feeling that if he were to try to trifle with NATO today, that the U.S. may not back that. And so what does that mean for the world order? It means we do have to retreat everything out of Europe. We're going to lose our great allies. We're going to lose our great trading preferences that we have that's great for American economy. We're going to lose the ability to patrol the oceans and make sure that our commerce can get through safely. And we're going to lose, of course, the moral high ground. And we're ultimately going to be breeding enemies to the United States of America, because no matter how much we want to retreat within our own borders and walls, we are still going to be one of the biggest, most powerful countries in the world, whether we like it or not, which means we're going to be the target of a lot of enemies around the world. And what we need to not do is breed enemies in countries that there will be enemies bred in, if in fact we are to leave them to their own devices and walk away. And this is just We will revert to the dark ages, and frankly, we're going to have to earn back what we have now with a lot of dead Americans, unfortunately.
What happens politically, militarily, if Congress doesn't step in and stop this ridiculous trade war?
Look, I think first thing we have to do is dispose of this notion that Donald Trump does anything for the country. He doesn't. This is all about him. So now let's look at it. What is he trying to get in this? Well, look, he's not going to take on actual tough people because then he may have a fight, and he's a coward. I mean, he really is scared to death. He's like I think of a 6-year-old boy that's still trying to earn his father's approval. That's Donald Trump. But he can try to pick a fight with our friends because he knows it's not going to start a war, and it makes him look tough. He looks super tough in his mind next to Canada. And he knows he's not going to start a shooting war with them. The other interesting thing is he claims that we got a bad trade deal with Canada and Mexico. It's like 1984, where we're supposed to forget what happened yesterday when he negotiated the USMCA and called it the greatest trade agreement ever negotiated. So what is it? Trump, make a decision. The reality is he's always believed in tariffs. He thinks he's going to raise a ton of money to spend on his pet projects. And he's obviously not going to do that. And I think it's just a way for him to be a bully and look tough without actually having to be tough around the world. Is the Congress going to stand up to this? No. It's going to take an economic, frankly, recession that these things actually could launch for, I think, Congress to have any courage. And I think even then it will be pretty mild.
You're beginning to hear a few little squeaks from a few characters. Senator Roger Wicker in the Senate, for example, objecting to selling Putin down the river. Tom Tillis, although he voted for Pete Hegseth, held the floor yesterday with Senator Jeanne Shaheen and talked about Ukraine. What are these senators thinking? And do they really care not one whit about America's role in the world, about our democratic allies? These people made careers calling all the rest of us pacifists and doves and too afraid to defend America. We weren't standing up for American exceptionalism. Where are they now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it goes to show that, unfortunately, I guess maybe this is a little bit of a symptom of the system we have. They just want to do what they need to do to get elected. They pretend like they have values. They pretend like they stand for something, as long as that's within what it takes to get reelected. And that's where they're at. Tom Tillis, I mean, look, he did give a great speech almost calling out the president on, they'll always say that the president shouldn't say this and then say, anyone who says that Vladimir Putin is a good guy is wrong, instead of saying the president who says this. Regardless, that's after he put Kash Patel in on the FBI. That's after he voted for Tulsi Gabbard, who loves Russia, by the way, and Pete Hegseth, who's walked around and said he's going to cut the Department of Defense in half, which that's going to be great when you basically want to take on China. So what are these? I do think that Trump is, and I feel like this week, he's crossed a line, though, a little bit. I think he's not read his base very well. He'll see like the Elon Musks and the kind of weirdo group in his base. But still, there's a number of Republicans that will at least don't like Putin and actually like Ukraine. And I feel like he may be crossing a line he doesn't recognize here. You've seen conservative media figures like Mark Levin turn against him on this. Even people like Brian Kilmeade asking him this questions. This may be one he's not able to drag conservatives along with, I hope. But at the same time, I've seen him drag conservatives and Republicans to places they never imagined they'd ever be a year or two ago.
That is so true. And you alluded to the defense budget. Pete Hegseth did make this very strange comment that he was going to cut 8% of the budget each year, but it really wasn't going to be a cut because he was going to spend it elsewhere. No explanation as to whether the Pentagon would even have an increase to keep up with inflation, and no accounting, of course, for the fact we'll be losing our allies in Europe, so we better bulk up. What is going on here? Or does he even have a game plan? Is he just making stuff up as he goes along?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think he's just making stuff up. I mean, look, is there waste in DOD? Yes. Every defense department around the world has waste, by the way. I mean, that's a symptom of a big government kind of monopoly on something like defense. So if they want to get in there and find where that waste is, or projects that haven't taken off that are, we continue to spend money on that could be spent elsewhere, that's great. That's not 8% of the defense budget. And it's certainly not 40% of the defense budget over 40 years. So he's talking out of his backside. But the thing is this is there's such a misunderstanding about the defense budget anyway. We spend about $850 billion right now. You implied inflation. For us to keep up with inflation, next year's defense budget has to go to basically 890 billion just to simply continue in essence spending what we were. Half of our defense budget goes to paying soldiers and benefits, which means we're actually spending half of that on things like modernization, operations, and stuff like that. And if you compare that number to China, which basically does not pay their soldiers well and hides a lot of their defense spending, we're actually pretty close to parity with China. And China loves to hide their defense budget. We can't do that. And so you want to give up the world to China? Okay, then this is how you do it. You create basically a well-formed militia to defend the United States of America. But if we actually want to continue to push back against China like they pretend to want to, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to invest more in defense. So efficiencies are fine. It's not 40% of the budget, and that's insane to pretend it is.
And by the way, one of the ways we increase the value is through alliances like NATO, because they do carry part of the burden and they do allow us to forward position troops and they do give us a tactical advantage. You noted that something seemed to change a little bit this week, and I do agree. And I'm not sure whether it's the moves in Ukraine, whether it's the Musk takeover of the federal government, whether it's the fact that some of these freezes and cuts are beginning to resonate in red America. When you talk to your friends around the country, when you talk to your former colleagues, do you sense that there's been any shift at all in public sentiment? Are people waking up finally?
I think it's starting to. I mean, I have a lot of friends that I won't say, well, I guess I do have a few hardcore MAGA friends, but I've got a lot of friends that voted for Trump and, they don't love him, but they certainly wanted him over Harris. And they're starting to send me texts, actually largely around Ukraine. Like, this is crazy. The DOGE stuff, the fake agency DOGE, is starting to, because there's always this story about now they're cutting, staff from the veteran suicide line. Like, why? Okay. And I mean, and I've got a lot of veteran friends, obviously, as one myself. So I do think it's starting to turn there. And I think more than anything, Jen, it's not even so much Donald Trump and whatever the issue is. It's the fact that a guy worth $500 billion, who's probably going to be the first trillionaire in the world, who has a lot of government contracts that he's protected from DOGE and also cut oversight of, and the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, are now friends pretending to be our great parents running this government and protecting us. And I got to tell you, it is so counter to who America's soul is that we want the rich to come in and take care of us. We're the opposite of that. We rebelled against exactly what we have in government right now. And I think that natural kind of feeling is still alive in the American people. And so, look, the Democrats, I'll be honest, I'm disappointed in them. They feel disheartened. They feel like the Republicans felt after the 2008 election. But I'm not a Tea Party fan, but the Tea Party came along out of this grassroots movement. I feel like there's kind of an opposite Tea Party happening, not a left-wing thing, but like we want to take America back from the oligarch class thing. And I think that could start to develop over the next few months and really turn into something that these folks sitting high on their horse in DC never expected.
Well, I certainly hope you're right. And among the groups that are being hurt the most are veterans, since
Totally.
veterans make up a huge percentage of our federal employee population. And that's why sometimes they're given special protections against being terminated. A lot of them are being terminated these days. So
Can I make another point about veterans?
Absolutely.
So, one of the things that some of the far rights have been talking about now is cutting veterans VA disability benefits, because it is a pretty big expenditure. What they forget is that the reason there's a glut right now in VA disability benefits, of which I'm part of, by the way, was because of our exposure to the burn pits in Iraq, which have long-term health implications that are going to be similar to Agent Orange. Congress, in a bipartisan way, passed a bill saying those veterans should be taken care of. We appreciate that Congress did this, but now you can't turn around and say we don't care about the veterans anymore because it's costing some money. Look, then raise people's taxes or find cuts in other areas. But the one area we shouldn't cut is in those that were willing to give their life, and in some cases did give their lives and marriages and family life for this country.
I couldn't agree more. I find it simply revolting that in order to give more tax cuts to the likes of Elon Musk, we're going to take benefits away from our veterans. It's really a moral abomination. Thank you so much for joining us
You
once
bet.
again, Adam, and thanks for your voice. I think the more Americans who used to be on the right and maybe still are in large part philosophically speak out against these outrages, I think the better we'll be. And as you have spoken many times, we need a big, broad coalition to fight back.
Here,
So
here.
thanks
That's
so
right.
much. We'll see you again soon.
Yep. Take care.